morning, everybody. Fox News alert. President Trump says he will consider ending so-called birthright citizenship, which removes the right for people born in the U.S. soil to parents who are non-citizens. Good morning, everybody. We're stacked today. 3 hours straight ahead. I'm Bill Hemmer, live inside of America's Newsroom. How you?
Good morning.
Nice to see you for breakfast, by the way.
Did you warm up after our little
that was good.
bit outside there?
Right.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sandra Smith. President Trump saying that during an interview with Axios. This is the Pentagon prepares to deploy more than 5,000 troops to our southern border. They are anticipating the arrival of thousands of Central Americans in that migrant caravan, and that group is now roughly 1,000 miles away from the U.S. southern border.
You can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. Now, how ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it has to end.
Kevin Cork live from the White House begins our coverage today. How you doing, Kevin? How soon might the White House act on an executive order like this?
Well, still too soon to tell, I think, is the honest answer, Bill. But it is clear they're working on this. And for the record, if you're born in this country, whether your parents are here legally or illegally, you are a citizen. At least that has been the policy. But as you pointed out, the president told HBO and Axios he'd really, quite frankly, like to change that. And he'd like to change that as soon as possible. A lot of people have blamed that for so-called birth tourism and chain migration. Now, for just a little context here, let me share what the 14th Amendment states here. This is the part of it that I think a lot of people will hear a great deal about, Bill, over the next 24 hours. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, and here's the key, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, this was meant to make sure that freed slaves were indeed citizens in this country, but the key phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, is right there. Now, the president's view is, listen, that means if you're already here legally, that amendment applies to you. It applies to you. But if you're not subject to U.S. jurisdiction, meaning you're a foreign national or you're subject to the jurisdiction of another country, you don't have that right. Either way, it will most certainly be challenged at the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, a bit more of context. I think you'll find this interesting. Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, France, India, the U.K. have all repealed birthright citizenship over the last 30 years, most notably the Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland over in the past, let's say, 15 years or so. Now, yes, critics are going to tell you, Bill, this is a midterm election ploy, but the president and the White House say he is deadly serious about it. Bill?
What's the plan for the president and first lady now in Pennsylvania? They'll go to Pittsburgh later today, Kevin.
Yeah, simply speaking, they just want to be there. They want to comfort those who are hurting. They want to make sure they not only pay their respects, but also visit those who have been impacted by the devastating violence. Here at the White House, as you take a look there, you see the flag is still at half staff in honor of those who were murdered over the weekend. And despite pushback from some who say they don't want the president to come to Pennsylvania, Mr. Trump told Laura Ingraham last night that going is the right thing to do.
I'm just going to pay my respects. I'm also going to the hospital to see the officers and some of the people that were so badly hurt. And I really look forward to going. I would have done it even sooner, but I didn't want to disrupt any more than they already had disruption.
Going to make his way over to the hospital to see some first responders and other victims. And, of course, we'll keep an eye on that, as well as China tariff news. That could be coming up later. But for now, back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin Cork leading our coverage north along there. Thank you, Sandra.
Fox News alert. We're now learning the man accused of sending pipe bombs to prominent Democrats had more than 100 targets on his mailing list. He made his first appearance in federal court yesterday. Phil Keating live in Miami with the latest. So, Phil, was this a hit list?
Well, FBI sources aren't quite going that far, at least not definitively. However, they certainly appear to be this mail bomber's hate list. According to federal law enforcement sources cited by reports, these 100 names were written on paper, discovered in Sayoc's politically charged white van, which was plastered, of course, with right-wing messages and images, pro-Trump material, and Barack Obama's and Hillary Clinton's faces in crosshairs. All of the recipients of the package bombs were reportedly among the names on the list. 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc, sporting a ponytail, shackled and wearing prison scrubs in court yesterday. Sayoc said little, and his initial appearance over within 4 minutes. Magistrate Edwin Torres went through the 5 counts he's facing. At one point, he looked around at the standing room only courtroom, spotted his sister, and appeared to tear up. Over the weekend, Sayoc obtained legal representation. These were lawyers who represented him before in some of Sayoc's dozen or so other run-ins with the law.
If you were in custody facing probably or potentially the rest of your life in jail, you cannot by definition be doing good.
Sayoc will have at least one more federal hearing here in Miami. That will be this Friday to discuss potential bond, which federal prosecutors want denied, as well as the extradition of Sayoc to New York. That is where this high-profile case ultimately will be tried. Sandra.
And Phil, documentary maker Michael Moore released video of Cesar Sayoc last night.
Yeah, this is outtake footage, so never seen before, taken from his film, a documentary called Fahrenheit 11/9, which he apparently shot at a bunch of Trump rallies. Well, you can see Sayoc right there in the crowd, enthusiastically bashing CNN, holding a sign with his bodybuilder biceps up in the air as the crowd chants, "Tell the truth," and CNN sucks, which have become automatic and sometimes hostile staples at every Trump rally these days. This footage by documentary maker Michael Moore, as I mentioned, from a Melbourne rally, which actually took place just 1 month after President Trump was inaugurated.
Phil Keating, thank you.
1 week from today, President Trump hitting the campaign trail over the next 8 days. He's got rallies, at least 11 of them planned for right now. Hugo Gerns, the editorial director for the Washington Examiner. Hugo, how you doing? I know you're all jacked up for this, so let's try and get, are you or aren't you?
Oh, very jacked up. Yeah, only a week to go. I'm looking forward to it.
More caffeine. I think that's what we need. Listen, we did a little shift, I would say, in our Senate map, okay? On the left, you've got 3 Dems leaning, 19 likely, total 45. For the Republicans, 3 leaning, 5 likely, for a total of 50. Everything in yellow is considered a toss-up, so that's Florida, Indiana, Missouri, Nevada, and Arizona. Great Senate races, very tight in all those races there. What we did, though, we changed Texas from a likely Republican to a lean Republican, and New Jersey from a likely Democrat to a lean Democrat. You look at this map and see what right now for the Senate next week?
I think that those moves that you made were right. Things have tightened again in Texas, where Beto O'Rourke was looking to fade away from the incumbent, Senator Ted Cruz. But that's, that's within a few points. And then over in New Jersey, I think this is a fascinating one because New Jersey is often regarded by Republicans as a kind of, where they always get disappointed. They always think it looks like it's possible and then they fail. But Bob Menendez, Senator Bob Menendez, the incumbent, has a lot of corruption sort of allegations around him. He's been in for a long time, and he's much closer. His challenger is much closer to him than the Democrats would feel comfortable with.
That would be a major upset. I think we would admit that
sure
if that's
would.
the case. Let me look at poll closings, and you tell me what you're looking at early on the night, okay? So here's what we're going to see a week from tonight. Everything that is in yellow at 7 o'clock will close. So that's Indiana, good Senate race there. Down Kentucky, good House race in Lexington. A lot of House races in Virginia, governor's race in Georgia. 7:30, you move into Ohio. West Virginia, good Senate race. Couple good House races in North Carolina. Then as we move throughout the night, you see the map fill in at 8 o'clock. And then 9 o'clock, and then 10 o'clock, right? All the way out to 11 o'clock where California closes and several House races are up contested there. Of that right now, early on, what would be an indicator for you, Hugo?
I think that Georgia will be an indicator, the governor's race there. I mean, I think that has been a whole lot closer than I had originally thought. I think actually Florida is going to be a real indicator too. The Senate race there, it's very close. Rick Scott was talking to one of our reporters at the Washington Examiner just yesterday. He predicts that he is going to win that. Now, obviously, he would say that, but he's within 2 points, and his internal polling suggests he's ahead. A lot of Republicans believe that just as in 2016, there's a sort of silent Republican vote, a pro-Trump vote, because those people are sort of been embarrassed by essentially the media hostility towards Trump, not to reveal their feelings. So, they think that they might have a couple of spare points in a lot of these polls.
Okay. All right. Well, last point here. The president has said repeatedly this is a base election. And if you look at the rallies and where he's going, that pretty much reflects his feeling. Go back to 2016. This is how the map looked when he pulled the upset over Hillary Clinton. His last stop is in southeastern Missouri, Cape Girardeau. He won that congressional district by 56 points 2 years ago.
Right.
So he's sticking to his thinking that this is a base election. You get those voters to turn out.
Yeah, it is a base. Midterms are generally about the base, and there's an irony here. President Trump is very much playing to his base. He's going to his base. Red states where Democrats are vulnerable, for example, in Missouri, that's probably going to help the Republicans in the Senate. There's a danger, however, that the things that will help the Republicans in the Senate appealing to the base will actually do some harm to their chances in the House. And I think this is why most people, the money is on the ticket splitting so that the House does flip Democrat, but the Republicans either retain or increase their majority in the Senate.
This thing can do a lot more, as you're going to see in the coming weeks.
Right.
Thank you, Hugo. Good to talk to you. Analysis there in Washington. Talk to you real soon. Thanks you, sir.
Bill.
Back over to Sandra for more.
Much more in the midterms coming up. We're going to be talking to House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. He is our headliner today. So where does he see the race headed with just 7 days left to go? Plus this.
And I'm watching television, and I see John James. I said, who's that guy? He's running in Michigan. Let me see it again. And I said, that guy is great. He's a star.
He's talking about John James. He wants to be the next senator from Michigan. He's running a tight race against Debbie Stabenow, but she's had the lead in all the polling. So what does James think about that now? We'll talk to him about his strategy with just a week to go, Sandra.
And funerals beginning today for some of the victims killed in the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting over the weekend. How that community is dealing with its grief and trying to heal. Straight ahead.
The tree of life. We will be back. We will be stronger than ever. The Tree of Life has been in Pittsburgh for 154 years. We're not leaving this corner of Wilkinson Shady. We will be back and we will rebuild even stronger.
This as reports emerge of problems during the jet's previous flight. Some passengers say they experienced rapid descents during a flight from Bali to Jakarta, and that would be consistent with data from flight tracking sites. The Lion Air jet crashed into the sea shortly after takeoff from Jakarta, killing everyone on board.
John James is a young star. And I said, I'm going to back him. And I backed him. I did a little research. I backed him. And he's taken off. He ends up winning with, not a lot of money. He ends up winning the primary. And he's doing really well. He's down 7, which sounds like a lot. That's nothing, because normally they're down 25 or 30.
President Trump, a ringing endorsement trying to help the Michigan Republican Senate candidate John James running against the incumbent Democrat Debbie Stabenow. John James is my guest now from his home state. Sir, good day to you. There was one poll that came out that showed you within 7, but you look at the Real Clear average, you're down 9.7 percentage points to be precise in the RCP average right now. What do you think in the final week? What's your closing argument here?
Well, I'll tell you, we were down 20 points in the primary, ended up winning by 10. People forget that Michigan's a very special state where we're sick and tired of the establishment politicians dictating to us what they think was best for us. That's the reason why both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders won in this state. People in the state of Michigan want somebody with experience, and I'm a combat veteran with that experience in the battlefield, understanding how to take care of our vets and keep our country safe. But I'm also a business leader who understands how to create economic opportunity and jobs. We cannot wait another 6 years to fix our Great Lakes. We can't wait another 6 years to fix our immigration, and we certainly can't wait another 6 years to make sure we take care of our health care.
Well, how do you battle against her name recognition? She is very
we get out there
well
and
known
put
in
the work in. We get out there and we tell people what they have and what they have to lose by voting for Debbie Stabenow. Debbie Stabenow is ineffective, she's hyper-partisan, and she's broken her promises. She broke her promises to fix our schools in 10 years. It's 2018 and Michigan still has failing schools. She broke her promises to fix our pharmaceutical drug prices, and our pharmaceutical drug prices are still spiraling out of control. She promised to give our service members everything we needed in Iraq, and she failed to do that in 2007 when she voted against emergency funding. I know, because I was in Iraq fighting for our freedoms. I will not let our veterans and our service members down, and we don't have another 6 years to take care of this. We have to do it now. This is the best opportunity.
I've been looking at some of the polling. You lead with men by a couple points. She leads with women by several points. Is that a problem for you?
Absolutely not. See, women are not a coalition. Women are the majority. Women are deciding that they are sick and tired of being dismissed and marginalized, and they're standing up. See, Men cannot give to women what they're already endowed by their creator. We need to make sure that we as men are treating our women as equals and engaging them as independent thinkers. Right now, women who are independent thinkers recognize the choice that they have to send somebody with combat experience who understands how to keep this nation safe, and someone with a business experience who understands how to continue growing our economy and protecting the American dream for future generations and for our children.
How do you think the president plays in Michigan? He won the state, but he only won it by 10,000 votes 2 years ago.
Well, I'm an independent thinker, and I will speak for myself, and I believe that people want a fresh perspective, because I believe that both parties have failed the American people. And I believe the president won this state, and Bernie Sanders won this state, because they're sick of the partisan politics, and they're sick of business as usual. I was walking to the studio today, and an African-American young man pulled over, rolled his window down, gave me the thumbs up, and said, "Go John James." And so that's not a particular demographic that the media would say that the president is doing well in. But when I'm knocking on doors in Detroit, when I'm going to churches in Detroit, people say that they can have their job and they can provide better for their families because our economy is growing. The only people who care the most about Trump, I'll tell you, Debbie Stabenow talks more about Trump than I do, because I'm focusing on the people of the state of Michigan. I'm focused on Tawas and Traverse City. I'm focused on Terrell and Tamika. I'm focused on the people of the state of Michigan and moving us all forward, and I will work with anyone. I will work with anyone in any party to make sure that we can move our state forward.
Okay, you say you're an independent thinker. Last question on this. Would you invite the president to come to Michigan? Would that help your campaign? Because the schedule from the White House that we're seeing does not have Michigan on it at the moment.
The president said yesterday that he would come to Michigan. I would welcome the president to Michigan, and I will show him the areas where our babies are drinking leaded water in Flint and drinking bottled water in Detroit. I will show him the areas that we need to improve, and I don't care what party you're in. You can't say no to additional resources back to the state of Michigan. We need to make sure that Michigan has a voice on the floor of the U.S. Senate, regardless of who's in the majority or who's in the White House, and I will bring that balance back, and we will never have a better chance than this. And if you'd like to learn more, please go to johnjamesforsenate.com and learn how we're going to win this thing on November 6th.
We've invited your opponent, Debbie Stabenow, to come on board over the next 7 days or so, and that invitation is still out there. We hope your opponent takes us up on that invitation. But, John James, thank you for your time. Closing week. Here we go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're also watching this tough battle play out in Tennessee for the seat of retiring Senator Bob Corker. Republican Marsha Blackburn facing off against Democrat Phil Bredesen. How will President Trump's visit to the state this weekend affect that race there? Tennessee Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn will join us live just ahead.
Also, there was dramatic video of the school bus getting swept away by flood waters. And what happened to this next? Coming up.
And the Pentagon taking action as thousands of migrants move closer and closer to our southern border. Our own Griff Jenkins is live with the caravan next.
What has been happening, and we're not, as of pretty recently, we're not letting them out. What happens is they would catch and release. We're catching, we're not releasing. So if they want to come over, but we're not even doing that. We're not letting them into this country.
Oh, no, you always think you can make it. That bus was quickly swept away. Thankfully, came to a stop near some trees. One child on board, but the child's okay. But the driver has since been fired. So that thing looks like it's just bobbing down the river there.
That's incredible footage.
Yep.
And when in doubt, don't do it.
When in doubt.
Flooded waters, for sure. All right, well, glad everybody's all right. President Trump, in a newly released interview, saying he plans to sign an executive order ending birthright citizenship for babies born in the U.S. to non-U.S. citizens. This coming as the Pentagon moves to deploy some 5,200 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. Thousands of migrants from Central America now only a few weeks and about 1,000 miles away from reaching the U.S. We're also learning a second migrant caravan has crossed Mexico's southern border, headed north. Let's go to Griff Jenkins. He's been doing some amazing reporting down there, Griff. What's the status of the caravan, and are they showing any signs of slowing down?
Hey, Sandra, absolutely not. It doesn't matter the 5,200 troops on the border or the admonitions from the administration. Let me show you something new that's developing here, and that is we've seen the 4,000 or 5,000 strong caravan walking to the border, but it seems now they're doing more of waiting for a ride to the border. This is the first time I have seen since I've been here an organized bus operation from the state of Oaxaca, actually getting volunteer buses to put people and load on them and take them to their their next location. And that's fairly significant now because, you know, these towns, they continue to help them. When we began this way back a week or so or more, when the Mexican police were trying to dissuade them from coming across the Guatemala-Mexico border, it seems now some of the least Mexican towns are really assisting them to make their way. Now, there's been a little bit of tensions on some of these because they're trying to get the buses for women and children primarily, but in many cases the husband's with them or the father and they don't want to be separated, and in some cases just the men, which make up at least 50% of this entire caravan or more, want to be in there. But here's the real problem. There's only 11 buses so far that we've counted that we're told is coming, and you would need upwards of 80 or more buses to actually move everyone. So a lot of people aren't going to get rides, and that's going to make for some tensions as they go next to their next stop, Juchitán, which is about 30 miles from where I'm standing in Niltepec. Ultimately, they want to go to Mexico City, and then they want to get to the U.S. border. Sandra?
Griff, what can you tell us about this second caravan?
Very important. You know, it is perhaps the advance of this caravan that's inspired a second and actually a third. Right now, we've seen in the last 24 hours the police battling with another sort of caravan of 1,000 or so trying to get across that same river down in the Guatemala-Mexico border. But a third one, we're told from the organizers of this caravan, they're talking forward, is they're originating in El Salvador. They're trying to catch up to join the second caravan. So there's a second and a third. In total numbers, that's about 2,000. So it's certainly growing, not necessarily dissuading anyone, although we should say that there's been about 1,500 of the original caravan that did turn back, were repatriated, or took Mexico's offer for temporary asylum. Sandra?
Griff Jenkins, you continue to bring some amazing pictures out of there, covering this story from the beginning. We will continue to track it all. Thank you.
More on this a little later, too, what the border states are saying about the president's plan to secure it. We'll talk to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton live. A lot to discuss with him. That's coming up in about 20 minutes from now.
Plus, Pittsburgh in mourning. The president and first lady traveling there today to pay their respects to the synagogue shooting victims and their families. We will be live with the very latest next.
Let us resolve that the evil forces that propelled that attack have no place in our lives, in our families, in our communities, in our institutions.
Was yesterday, the Dow ended up falling considerably after it was up, and then it was down, and then it was up. It was one of those volatile days that we've come to know over the past couple of weeks. October shaping up to be a pretty rough month for the stock market. And as I should just quit talking. Look at that. Gains have just gone away. 2 minutes into trading, and it is sharply unchanged.
Sharply unchanged. You know, I think I turned my head yesterday in the afternoon, and we went from, I think we were up 300, Sandra.
Yep.
And we were down, 550. It was a 900-point swing in about an hour's time.
And by the way, this is the week that we will get the monthly unemployment report for October. So Friday, think about that, 2 days before Election Day. That is going to be a big one to watch. So we'll be watching the market.
This thing here ain't for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that. I mean, if you want to have a good day, just
Dramamine.
turn away and wait for the weekend.
Seasick watching that.
9:32 now. Let's go to Pittsburgh. The first funerals will be held today for some of the 11 people killed in Saturday's anti-Semitic shooting spree inside of that synagogue. President Trump and the First Lady will be in the city later today, showing support and grieving with a city that is in mourning for some time. David Lee Miller back live in Pittsburgh with more from there. David Lee?
Bill, it is a solemn day here in Pittsburgh. 4 of the victims of the massacre on Saturday are going to be laid to rest. There will be funeral services for the brothers David and Cecil Rosenthal, Dr. Jerry Rabinowitz, and Daniel Stein. The man who allegedly took their lives, Robert Bowers, had his first court appearance yesterday. Still suffering from injuries resulting from a gunfight with police, Bowers was confined to a wheelchair. During the brief hearing, he could be heard mumbling to himself. He said yes when a judge asked if he wanted a court-appointed lawyer. He also responded yes to having received a copy of the criminal complaint containing 29 charges. Bowers' next scheduled date in court will be on Thursday. At that time, the U.S. attorney says there's going to be an opportunity to present evidence that Bowers murdered 11 people. And President Trump is expected to soon arrive here in Pittsburgh to show his support and solidarity with the victims and this community. Some, like Rabbi Jeffrey Myers of the Tree of Life Synagogue, say that Mr. Trump is welcome. Others here, including some of the survivors of the shooting, want Mr. Trump to stay away. A progressive Jewish group is circulating a petition saying that Mr. Trump should not be coming to Pittsburgh until he denounces white nationalism. This is a day here, Bill, of both controversy and profound sorrow. Back to you.
A lot of sorrow. David Lee Miller, thank you. Back on that story in Pittsburgh. Thanks.
Back to the midterm elections. President Trump returning to Tennessee to Sunday for a rally in support of Marsha Blackburn. She is in a hotly contested race with former Governor Phil Bredesen to replace retiring Senator Bob Corker. The Real Clear Politics poll average shows the Republican leading her Democratic challenger up 6.5 points. Congressman Marsha Blackburn joins us now. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Good to be with you.
Few days away, and how are you feeling about this race?
We are feeling good. We're working hard. We know the only poll that counts is on Election Day, and I've got to tell you, we're going to make certain that we get our voters to the polls, and we're excited. The president is coming back to Tennessee, going to stop in Chattanooga and help us get those voters to the polls.
Looking at that Real Clear Politics poll average, where Bredesen is trailing you only by six and change as far as points. Is this race a little bit tighter than you anticipated just a few days out?
Oh, we knew from the get-go it was going to be tight. This is his fourth statewide race. It is my first, and we knew that we were going to have to work hard to get our voters out there, get them to the polls. And, you know, Sandra, to be certain that they were focused on the future and what this race is all about. We've done a good job of that, and we feel good about where we are.
We offered Phil Bredesen, by the way, an invitation to come on this program. He's not doing national TV right now. With a response from his team. Why is this race so tight? When you look at the issues in your state, what is most important, and why is he able to shrink that margin as much as he has been?
One of the things that we hear the most about is Supreme Court justices and our federal judges. People want to see constitutionalists there. They want to keep their tax cuts. The Trump tax cuts are working in Tennessee. The economy is going gangbusters in our state, and people like having a little bit of extra money at the end of every month, and they're socking it away for future endeavors, children's education, things of that nature. People also are focused on what's happening with this caravan that is coming to the southern border. They want to see our border secured. And as people focus on the future and the message, then we know that our support grows every single day.
Sounds like, obviously, immigration, the economy are making the case of the biggest issues that your voters face in that state. Tough, hotly contested, vicious. We've heard a lot of descriptions of this race, Congressman. How would you describe this race at this point in time?
Well, of course, what you have seen is a vicious nature. We had a Democrat congressman from the state wanted me to commit suicide, jump off a bridge, then compared me to Waterboy. You have one of my opponent's spokespeople who's used an expletive and called Trump voters idiots and said that they weren't worth the time. And then you had the disruptions at our rally on Sunday by people who used terrible terminology and tried to disrupt a Get Out the Vote rally at a private venue. And my opponent, Phil Bredesen, is the leader of the Democrat Party. He should be denouncing this, and he should be seeking to have this race focus on the issues just as we have done.
Again, we've invited him on the program. We'll continue to do so to get his response to that. But meanwhile, when you talk about Lindsey Graham, and he obviously went to support you in your state, he says you represent good old common sense. He went on to really take on Democrats' attempts to oust Brett Kavanaugh, saying their efforts represented the will of the mob. Listen.
There's only one way to fix this problem. Only one way. Beat them at the ballot box. Marsha holds this seat. Game, set, match.
First, your response to that, and of course we know that several protesters were removed before the start of your speech there. But when you listen to Lindsey Graham and you look back at that moment, what do you think?
I think Lindsey is exactly right. What we have to do is make certain that we put an end to this type of disruption. And what we do is to win, to send that message that we want to move this country forward and continue the economic growth, continue to make certain that our allies around the globe know that they are our allies and that our enemies know that they should be fearing us. And Sandra, people want to see this done. You know, we've got Fort Campbell, which is here in Tennessee. It is in Clarksville. And those men and women in uniform, they want to know that we're going to have a strong military, that Congress is going to continue to support them. And they appreciate the fact that after several years of having cuts to the military, cutting the end strength, cutting resources for equipment, for what they need to carry out their mission, that there is a focus from this administration and this Republican-led House and Senate to make certain that our military has what they need to defend us. Families, small businesses, you know, in my race, I have both the Chamber of Commerce and the NFIB endorsing me because tax cuts are working, productivity, wages are increasing, more jobs, and this is what people want to see more of. They do not want to see more disruption.
I know you and I have chatted a lot about that over the years. Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, great to have you on the program this morning.
Good to be with you.
The country will be watching in Tennessee.
Yes.
Thank you.
In the meantime, President Trump has some thoughts on Hillary Clinton's future. She fanned a bit of speculation about the White House this week, and we'll find out how that is being received in a moment.
Plus, a caravan of migrants making their slow trek north through Mexico, hoping to seek asylum in the United States. Why President Trump says they're wasting their time. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton will join us live next.
We're a hospitable nation. They're taking advantage of our generosity. We need to send a clear signal.
The Kroger supermarket in Kentucky now being investigated as a hate crime. Police say the suspect in the case first tried to enter a predominantly black church last week before his attack at the supermarket in a suburb of Louisville. 69-year-old Maurice Stollard and 67-year-old Vicki Lee Jones were killed after being shot multiple times. The gunman, who has a lengthy criminal record, now facing 2 murder charges.
We don't want them in this country. If they want to come into the country, you have to apply like other people. We have millions of people coming in. They're applying. They're coming in legally. We have a very strong border. I called up the military. This caravan is not, they're wasting their time.
So President Trump and the thousands of migrants now making their way through Mexico toward the U.S. They're hundreds of miles away from Mexico City at the moment. Not to mention our country. His remarks coming only hours after the Pentagon announced it would deploy about 5,200 troops to the southern border. Ken Paxton is the Attorney General of Texas. You deal with this issue every day, sir. Thank you for coming back, and want to get your perspective on this military move. What do you think about it?
I think it's a good move. Obviously, we need help along the border. We've been struggling for years and years, and finally we have a president who's doing something about it. And obviously, with this caravan coming, our Border Patrol is going to need all the resources they can get to make sure that they don't illegally cross in. Now,
what about the cooperation on behalf of the Mexican government? Here's what I see. The first caravan, you're not getting a lot, at least to dissuade them. The second caravan was a whole different matter as they moved through a river, apparently. Reports that Mexican police got on their way to stop them. I think if you marry that idea with the thought about the U.S. military going to the border, you have 2 deterrents that are sending a message to migrants on the move. Is that possibly the strategy here, sir?
Absolutely. I think the president has obviously talked to the president of Mexico, and they are at least doing something. And I think as people hear about this in Central America, it does create a deterrent, both to come through Mexico and then to thinking that they're going to get through our border. So, yeah, I think it's I think ultimately it'll be very effective.
All right. More with the president, Laura Ingraham, last night talking about asylum or the lack thereof. Watch.
If they don't get asylum, they get out. And very few people, they don't actually, if you want to wait, they don't usually get asylum. You know that.
80%.
The problem is they release them in, and then they have the trial 3 years later, and nobody shows up. But we are going to, unlike Obama and unlike others, we are going to take the people, we're going to put them in, and they're going to wait. And you know what? Two things happen. When they find out that that happens, you're going to have far fewer people come up.
What do you think about that logic?
I think it actually works. You know, he can actually, if he wanted under federal law, prevent them from ever even getting asylum. But if they do want to allow that opportunity, I do think it's a good to put them somewhere where they don't disappear for a couple of years and then we never find them.
You've heard about the possibility of an executive order, right? That news breaking earlier today on anchor babies, meaning if you're born to parents who are not citizens, but you are a baby born in this country, you will get citizenship. An executive order could overturn that. There could be a legal fight that comes after that. What do you think of that move, and what would happen because of it?
Look, our immigration policy is a mess. Congress has failed to address it. I hope this is something that I think most Americans find unacceptable, that you create an incentive for somebody to cross the border, have a baby, and suddenly they're a citizen. It doesn't make any sense, and I'm glad the president's taking a look at this and considering this option.
Yeah. Would you expect a legal fight if that happens?
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. We'll see a legal fight.
Can he win on this?
You know, I haven't actually researched this, but I would guess that this will be a very interesting question. And ultimately, my guess would be that we'll be sitting in front of the Supreme Court answering this on maybe a close call.
Because that's a 14th Amendment matter, is it not?
So, yeah, I have no doubt that this will go all the way up to the Supreme Court and that there'll be lots of discussions. I don't think we've had a case like this maybe ever, but at least not in a very long time. So it'll be interesting to see what this new Supreme Court does.
Interesting. Last question. A week from now, you've got the midterms. How do you think it's working down there in Texas? We moved the Cruz-Beto O'Rourke battle to likely Republican to lean Republican. Where do you think that race is?
You know, I actually feel better and better. I think that Ted Cruz has done a really good job of distinguishing himself from his opponent. His opponent tried to run on a message of basically a very general message, and Ted Cruz has done a very good job of explaining that there's significant differences between the two of them, and that Beto, actually his views fit more with California than they do with Texans.
So you're expecting victory for Cruz? I mean, that's what I hear in your answer.
I literally
you didn't
no
say it.
doubt. No, I have no doubt that Ted Cruz is going to win this race.
We'll see you next week. Thank you, sir, for your time. Ken Paxton, they're live in Austin. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
New details emerging about the man accused of sending mail bombs to high-profile Democrats, activists, and others. Proof he had much bigger plans.
Well, the midterms end just 1 week away, and the cartoonist made famous by his character Dilbert is now predicting, quote, the greatest turnout by Republicans maybe ever.
Joining us now with more is cartoonist and author of Win Bigly, Mr. Scott Adams. Great to see you again, Scott. You predicted that President Trump was going to win a long time ago before everyone else did.
I did, back in 2015, yeah.
What's your prediction for the midterms?
I think it might be the biggest, as you heard, the biggest turnout for a midterm by Republicans. I think it's going to be intense. Part of it is because the Republicans have something to lose, and part of it is because it might be the most fun day they've experienced since 2016. You know, if you go to the dentist and you have 12 cavities, you don't want to go back so much the next time. And that's what the Democrats experienced the last election. It was like a horrible experience. So if they were rational, they would try harder to get out the vote. But people aren't that rational. You do more of what feels good and less of what feels bad. And I think Republicans are sort of a high action to talk ratio, and they may be underrepresented in the polls and maybe far more likely to turn out because it's going to be fun if they win.
Do you think it's also a little bit because of the whole I'm going to vote for Donald Trump and not tell anybody I'm voting for Donald Trump because it had so much angst with certain people?
Yeah, there's absolutely a suppressed, feeling about talking about it, even to pollsters, I would imagine. So I think you're going to get a little surprised that way and probably just a lot of energy.
You can tell, Scott, by the gloves, you live in California. It's got to be hard for somebody who is such a Trump supporter to live out there. What doesn't the political left understand about the president?
They don't understand, first of all, when he criticizes the press, he's talking about fake news. And I think people have thought past the sale. The question is the fake news so bad that it should be criticized by everybody, including the president? And they've made us think past that to a president shouldn't criticize the press.
Do you think there's fake news?
Clearly, yeah. I mean, my favorite example is Charlottesville, when there was a protest about pro and anti-statues, and the president said there were fine people on both sides. That was reported as he says there are fine people in the racist group, you know, the white supremacists. That wasn't really the context. The context was pro-statue, anti-statue.
He probably could have been a little more clear with the language he used.
Absolutely could have been more clear, but the way it's been presented is as if a sitting president not only said that Antifa was fine people, I'm sure he didn't say that, but that he also said that the white supremacists were fine people in front of America and thought it was a good idea. That clearly never happened.
Hillary said she wanted to be president. Doesn't want to run, but she wants to be president. Do you think she'll be running in 2020?
Not a chance.
Hey, folks, give it up for Scott Adams.
All right. Buy it.
Win bigly.
Our All-Star panel is back with their final thoughts. Next.
Any other way.